Well, thanks for coming in. You've done an interview with Mickey, your husband, and myself, and today we get to hear from just you alone. So I'm ecstatic about that.
I'm glad to be here.
So you're a veteran. You've been in recovery 20 some odd years, and you've had to live with a pretty significant caseload of trials and warfare. And anyone that's ever been around you, our staff can attest to it. There's a beauty, there's a grace, there's obviously a bravery about you. Talk about the things that you see betrayed spouses do, and maybe that you did that just, man, could have destroyed the whole process, could have just eaten you alive, that could have just really ruined everything for you.
I made every mistake in the book. I mean, I'm definitely, it's so funny to hear you describe me the way you described me, because going through the process, I felt none of those things. So I'm extremely flattered to hear those words associated with me. But trial and tribulation and growth in God, right?
Yeah.
And no, I made every mistake, and even all these years later, I think still make mistakes. But I did the going physical, I did the raging, I did isolating, and it didn't get me anywhere. It actually did get me somewhere. It put me further into the pit. It left me stuck. And after a while, you just realize that's not where you want to be. And it's not about, I want to be with Mickey, or I want to be with my husband. I mean, those were truths, but at some point in the depression and all the pain, as an individual, I had to go, wait, nope, this is not working for me, and I need to do something better, and I can't expect Mickey to drag me along. I've got to get there. I've got to figure this out. And, we all have different things. We talked about it in that prior video of, exercise, spiritual, whatever, but you have to find a way, whatever that is for you.
And when you look back on the road that you've been on, now you and Mickey lead our EMS online groups. You're still actively involved, which I find refreshing, because a lot of people are kind of like, let's hurry up and heal, and then never look back and never talk about it again and just put that thing away. But you guys have chosen to say, look, we've survived this, and now we're going to help others. What drives you to do that? Why is it so? I mean, it has to be an enormous amount of reminders and triggers, even 20 years later, to go back and lead an EMS online group and hear people's stories. I mean, how do you navigate through that?
Well, the triggers are not the same that they were, right? I mean, and we have done so much work that those conversations come more naturally, more easily, and we are able to laugh. And I know that people just don't believe that, right?
People just laugh at you saying, we can laugh about it now, it's funny.
No, what happened wasn't funny,
right.
But the mistakes that we made along the way are probably a bit humorous and embarrassing, and there's no pride associated with that. But to be able to get to a place where we're like, oh my gosh, look what we've overcome. And to have that, that's why we do it over and over again, is not just, it is about what we get from helping people. I love hearing through the process, especially of EMS Online, which is that 13-week course. So as a mentor or a group leader on that call, I get to meet these people and see them through this transformation.
Yeah. Right.
We've been doing this with you guys for almost 11 years now. I could probably count on one hand the groups that I couldn't wait for the calls to be over.
Right.
The majority of them I feel so attached to. I really sincerely want to see them progress, and I love to hear it as they go through the process. That just feeds my soul. I feel like that is why I went through what I went through. And if it's a small thing, then that's the thing, right? But it does create a common bond for Mickey and I, especially when we do the calls together.
And looking at where your life is now, and for those that maybe haven't seen the video of you and Mickey, you guys have been married how long?
Almost 25 years this year.
Yes, congratulations. And you've been in recovery for 20 years, and there's a child from the affair partner that you talk about in that video. But here's what I want to ask you. and I know all the betrayeds, male and female, want to know this. So after 25 years of marriage, 20 years of grinding it out on a battlefield, of healing, of forgiveness for each other, for all of that, what is your life like now? Do you enjoy Mickey? Are you married for the kids? Is Mickey just some billionaire that you're staying married to so that, it's all worth it? Because there is a cynicism that says, in it for the kids. She's just making the best of it. Like, how does a woman who's strong and beautiful and courageous stay with a guy like that? So clear up the confusion. I mean, what is life? And I'm throwing this at you because we didn't even talk about this off camera, but what is life like right now for you as a woman who's been through a nuclear bomb disaster?
I will tie this to phase of life as well. We're getting ready to be empty nesters, which I think I told you off camera, but like Mickey always uses this phrase, the best is yet to come. And we actually have that an old plaque in the house. And for a long time, sometimes I turn that plaque around. Stop telling me that. That's not what I feel today.
That's real.
But It is real, right? And I think about that when sometimes I let that wash over me and I'm like, it is. The best is yet to come. And I want that. It's not like I wake up every day and there's roses and there's, we're leaping through flowers in some sort of field together. We're real. We fight.
Absolutely.
We have disagreements. We trigger each other just with our personalities sometimes.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
is marriage, right?
Yes.
We have all of that stuff. But what we've realized is he's the hand I want to hold. He's the one I want to go on walks with. He's the one that I can have the deepest conversations with. And I learned something, not just about him, but about the world, about philosophy, about the Bible. Like, he's just the most interesting person to me. And I think that makes the journey.
So you enjoy doing life together?
Yes.
So let me ask you a question that I think it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
And we know there's no wrong answer, but when you found out about the multiple affairs, the sex addiction, the child from an affair partner, what was the motivating force that said, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm not just going to be done. Because anybody could hear that and just go, oh, who would not support you going, hey, it's just too much. Like, I love you, I care for you, but this is too much. But yet you chose to give him a shot, and here you sit 20 years later, fulfilled, happy. What was the motivation to give it another shot?
I mean, it's so many things. It really is. It's and it changes, right? I mean, it changes over time. I think the initial thing was I loved him. That was the foundation. He was my best friend. Start from there. I want to be there. I want to figure this out. There were times where it was like, dude, I can't carry you anymore.
I love that.
There were times where he was like, Steph, I can't carry you. And I think the honesty that we've developed, I think we always had it, but it definitely came to the top, right? So yeah, over time it changes a bit. It's if you can get to a place, and that's why I love. You said something earlier about doing this coursework and being a group leader and why we do it. And the truth is, I love the dialogue that it gives Mickey and I to talk about the in a healthy way.
That's so funny. So you can talk about all this stuff in a healthy, redemptive way and not scratch each other's face off and leave the room and all that.
No, we love it and we look at it as growth opportunity.
I think that creates such a normalcy for people to kind of go, whoa. So number one, it probably scares some people. Oh my gosh, it's been 20 years, you're still talking about it. But number two, it helps them feel safe in that you're not avoiding it. You don't have this elephant in the room 20 years later, right?
Yeah. Well, and I kind of live my life that way, though. I almost feel like I don't like to let things kind of like, sneak attack me. So I'm always sort of like, okay, let's just talk about it. Let's just get it out on the table. Let's have a conversation about it. And then let's go on with life, right? And so it's not like we talk about it every single day.
Sure.
In the beginning, yes, but you have to in the beginning.
Absolutely.
You've got to get to where you feel comfortable with it and you feel safe about talking about it. then over time it does. It becomes much more, and this doesn't sound a little crazy, but it ties your relationship together.
I think the unfaithful is terrified of talking about it because our own shame goes off inside of us. We're embarrassed. We haven't forgiven ourselves. So now we get angry and we get upset. But you just said that it ties you together when we will talk about it. Mm-hmm. So is it safe to say that when Mickey would talk about it, that you felt like he was being safer, that he was being humble? What words would you use to describe, besides it tying you two together?
Yeah.
What did you feel from him when he talked about it?
Honest and present. Honest and present. And for me, I think present, honestly, over the honesty, because he was so focused and he wanted to be there for the conversation. He wasn't running away from it, which balances off the early times that he did want to run away from it. And I think that the fact that we've lived a life so open about it, it just has taken any of the fallacies really about that this can destroy your life, and this can, I know that it can.
Sure.
And it feels like that, but it doesn't, you don't have to stay in that place. And I just think it just brings out a healthier exchange, honestly.
And I say this to couples all the time. I'll say, no matter what the story is, and you're living proof. I mean, we've already talked about all the things that you've had to wade through, but if two people are willing to do the work, and if two people are willing to commit to the process,
mm-hmm. Yes,
you yourself feel like, yeah, you can heal from anything.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, we've talked about being fans of therapy, and therapy is key. I mean, Mickey and I have even done all of the separate stuff where we've done family of origin work.
Yeah.
We've both done trauma weekend work, all of that. That stuff is not easy. And it's a little exhausting. It's a lot exhausting, let's be honest.
Right.
But, and it's not like you walk away with all these immediate answers. It's one of the reasons I still love to go to therapy, is that my therapist will challenge me in something. And I might walk away feeling a little sour, but I always process through it. And then like about 2 weeks down the road, I'm like, that's why he asked me that question. Wow, I feel like I can now engage in a healthier way with Mickey in how I ask something, or even if it's a family member or someone I'm working with, it just gives me a bigger basket of tools, honestly.
And you said this in our interview. I found it convicting, but yet encouraging, that you talked about how there was a point when Mickey was working so hard that it actually made you feel like, hey, I got to step it up. And I want you to talk about that for two reasons. One is the unfaithful needs to hear that, that when we will get on with our work, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but when we will do our part, what goes off inside of you? So talk about what went off inside of you, what you felt when Mickey was just running. And then when you felt like he was kind of doing more work than you, what did you feel?
So, the funny thing is I don't know initially, he started getting into it. I think for him, and this is where I would encourage, anyone don't be afraid to go to those meetings. Everyone at those meetings is dealing with the same crap.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes a heck of a lot worse than yours, right? And you go in there, and I can't speak for Mickey and I can't speak for those guys, but I just know when he'd come home from meetings, the relief, you could just see it in his body, right? Like, wow, I just shared some really serious stuff, and I was heard, and I was supported, and nobody, walked out of the room on me, or nobody made me feel less than. And I think that in and of itself, right? And the more that he'd go to that, and then he was sharing it with me, but he also, the heart started to change, I think, in a little bit, in that he was taking ownership for things that I think he was afraid to initially. And not that we were keeping any list or detailing anything. Right. It was just conversational. And then all of a sudden it was, oh my gosh, have you read this? And I will say, Mickey's probably the most well-read individual that I've ever met. Movies, music, all of it. And so he has a way of connecting this material to all of those genres. And he knows me well enough that he can find the article and present it.
But he had initiative, it
he
sounds
did.
like.
He did have initiative. I mean, we've said I had to draw a line in the sand to say, you need to figure this out because I'm hitting a wall.
Exactly. We're not trying to present that Mickey was the good soldier of recovery.
No.
He had to have a point where you said to him, figure it out, I'm not living this way anymore, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he'll tell you, there was a moment in time, even with his recovery, that I started to get the, and I will just say, any recovery guys, please don't do this. But I think it's a humorous story in that he came up and he's like, well, my recovery guys are saying this, this, and this. And I was like, well, are you married to your recovery guys? And, and then I was like, okay, but we can do something with this. We can reset.
And how did he respond when you had that heart-to-heart moment?
He knew it. He knew it immediately.
Yeah.
It was like, because he started to feel so good. And that was the thing, right? He was feeling so good with those meetings. Now he's an addict.
Yeah.
What is he going to do? He's going to go to more and more meetings.
Right.
He's still feeding an aspect of something. But then I was like, oh, the end result that's coming out of this is actually much better than I ever could have thought. So in turn, it wasn't even about me trusting Mickey. It was me trusting that process and those guys, honestly, and what was happening in those meetings.
So the question I want to ask you that has been burning inside of me, and I think every betrayed has to come to this crossroads. And I know that men and women watching you, hearing your story, are wrestling with the question of, how do you see yourself? After all that you've been through, all the work that you've had to do, and you've outlined so much of it, but it would take us a million videos to talk about all the work we've had to do to sit here and be okay with ourselves.
Right.
And so many betrayeds kind of struggle. How am I going to respect myself if I forgive these things, if I accept these things, if I live with this person knowing what they're capable of doing? So you've got 20 years in the game.
Right.
How do you see yourself after choosing to stay, doing all the work that you've done, living through so much of what you've had to live through?
I mean, I've said this many times, I love the woman God has grown me into. And had I not gone down this path, I don't know what Stephanie would have looked like. I just know what I look like today. And I know what God calls me to. And I do feel proud of what, and I will always say we've accomplished, because it wasn't just me on my own. But there are phases, and I had the ups and downs of feeling days that I felt completely empowered, and I felt, hey, I'm smart, attractive, fill in the blank, whatever. I could move on without Mickey.
Right.
And I could be totally fine. But what does that look like for me, and do I really want that?
Yeah.
And then I've had those moments of, oh my gosh, I'm going to be alone forever. And, so I've done that roller coaster ride. But any way I look at it through this journey, I will tell you, and not to go into it today, but the book of Hosea, the story of Hosea, for me, is tied to my story with Mickey and me feeling called to be open to this healing, having a healing heart towards my husband, and embrace that this is just what was delivered to us, and this is what's on my plate, and what does God want me to learn from it. And at the end of the day, the biggest thing for me is, with everything that we've been through, I know that I could have walked away from Mickey.
Right.
But I'm forever grateful that I not just stayed with him, but took a step towards him.
And you chose to do it.
And I chose to do that. Exactly.
There wasn't some religious pressure. You could have, I love the fact that you said, I could have walked away.
Yeah.
And every betrayed has that choice they have to wrestle through. But one of the things I love about what you said is that you chose to do it. Mm-hmm. And you didn't I didn't hear any begrudging choice. I didn't hear any, well, I'm going to stay with you, but I'm going to destroy you every day and make you pay. But you actually, and I love that, you took a step towards him. What does that mean?
It's embracing the reality. It's living in the solution, that great phrase that he uses so much. What does that look like for a couple? It's one thing to say it tied to addiction recovery, but that phrase covers so much. And it's us against the problem. Again, using that phrase, but working together and moving towards him in his growth and everything he's gone through, and accepting where he is and what he's done, but seeing the bigger picture ahead of us. There's still so much ahead of us.
Right.
Why not be able to hold each other's hands and respect each other? And, it's not running. You could walk, you can skip, you can stroll. But
You can crawl if you need to.
You can crawl if you need to.
Any way you can make it.
Drag your body, if that's what it is. But
I'm honored. Filming the interview with you and Mickey and having you come in today has been just a breath of fresh air, authentic, real, fresh air. As we say goodbye, if you were to take 30 seconds and encourage a betrayed, male or female, on how to maybe just get through. You've had some awful, awful, awful days.
Yeah.
Take 30 seconds. Talk about how did you get through some of your most awful days.
Anything that I would say to anybody that's on this path, it's so easy to get sucked up into the what happened. And that's self-care. I'm going to come back to self-care. But I'm going to come back to that thing about self-care on those 3 levels: your emotional, your physical, and your spiritual. And for me, that spiritual was the initial thing. And I really was just open to the process. I would pray, okay, God, I don't know, what material should I read, whatever. I always did a thing 3 times. If it came to me 3 times, I'd do it. But spiritual, working out, a physical outlet. We talked about that a little bit. Emotional, it's having a safe place and safe people to talk to. I use safe and healthy, 2 different things, because somebody could be a safe person, but not necessarily healthy in this journey.
Right, exactly.
And identifying the difference, I think, is the biggest, I don't want to call it a barrier. It's definitely a hurdle, but give yourself that space and that grace to figure that out. There is no reason to put your foot on the gas on this. Take your time, breathe through it, but focus on those 3 pieces of self-care.
I think you have so much to give. I can't wait to have you come in again. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
You've been awesome.
Appreciate it.